Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have 3 people on right now, and we just logged on. We have Nurse Adrian with us. Woo!
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you're on my channel, thank you. If you made it, I don't even know if I'm actually going live on my channel, but if not, I'll post it later.
I think you have some feedback. I don't know if it's coming from me or from you.
I was hearing something when the intro was playing. So I don't know.
I just muted myself. Talk, and I'm going to mute myself,
Okay.
and then I'm not hearing it. I don't think I hear it anymore.
I don't. I don't
Okay.
hear it now.
Well, problem solved.
Okay.
So today we're going to be talking about NP or nurse practitioner burnout as well as RN burnout. But Nurse Adrian, it's been a while since you joined us. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been up to?
Yeah. Hey, it's great to see everybody. Thanks for tuning in. So I recently started nurse practitioner school for psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. I'm finishing up my first term. Super excited. It was it was a long decision coming, but when I made the decision, it happened very quickly. So I've had to adjust very fast my lifestyle for the rigors of being back in graduate school, which is pretty serious stuff, as you know.
And you don't have to say what school you're going to, but how did you select the school? Any advice for people thinking about psych NP school?
Yeah, I so you can really get into analysis paralysis looking at graduate schools, nurse practitioner schools. There's absurd amount of dialogue on, Facebook groups about it, and there's no real right answer or best. Everybody has their own um opinion, right? And then because it's hard to distinguish, well, what's what that effort the person put in versus the actual school itself, etc. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to get into a school or go to a school that was going to do my clinicals, set up my clinical arrangements. I wasn't too worried about that though. So once I removed that off the list, and then I just went with what's the best reputation, and then I wanted to have some live format. So the school I'm in is online, but there is a live format if you want that, which was nice. So I like to be able to see my professors and actually have a dialogue with them. And that to me was super important and has been really helpful.
Yeah, I think it's very important to make sure that your school is accredited. What is its reputation? Make sure essentially that it's not a diploma school. I feel like with NP school, it's already under increased scrutiny. So just making sure that you're getting a quality education. Um, and also just some things to keep in mind. You can always opt to go private, but obviously like state schools are going to be a little bit more affordable than private schools.
Yeah.
But entry criteria, maybe more, or things of that sort.
Yeah, and where I am, schools are really expensive. Brick and mortar schools are super expensive. Whether I go to Maryland, DC, wherever it might be. So I just decided to go online. That works better for my schedule. But absolutely, you have to get something accredited, and really, you've got to make sure it has the right accreditation for where you want to be working or where you see yourself potentially working. You don't want to, like, I went to a National League of Nursing school for my RN program because I knew possibly I'd want to work in the federal government, and that's a requirement. You have to go to an NLN school. A lot of that stuff has become a little more consolidated now, so it's not as unusual. You're more likely to be okay. But yeah, accreditation, pass rates. I think my school's a 97% pass rate, something like that. Yeah, so I feel really confident. And the important thing is that you start networking right away to get those clinical assignments. You just start. I've just told everybody I'm working back in a hospital, so I work with a lot of APPs, and I put out the word. I've talked to the doctors. I just kind of putting it out there, like, hey, I'm going to be starting clinicals in July. Just if you know anybody, let me know.
That's a great point, especially in psych. That's the number one thing I always hear. It's really hard to find clinical placements. So networking is a crucial part that I fully recognize. I wasn't always the best at networking. I wouldn't, it's like I would know people, but I wouldn't take down their contact information. So get contact information, network, talk to people, because you never know who knows someone that can connect you to a preceptor. When I was thinking about doing the Psych NP program before I got my current full-time job, I thankfully, because of all the years I was teaching psych and I was still in contact with someone that I went to school with many, many years ago. I mean, this is more than 10 years ago. I'm still in contact with him, and he's now a psych NP, so he was willing to precept me. So it's important to stay in contact with people.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know anybody that's done psych NP that I went to school with or even have worked with. A lot of people I worked with in California have gone on to do NP since, COVID, the last 4 years. Most of them have done FNP program because there's one that's very affordable, really good in California if you're a resident. So, yeah, it just, I wanted that flexibility and fluidity. My program also allows half of our clinical hours to be done via telehealth, which is a huge bonus if that, if a clinical site can accommodate that. So yeah, part of
So
burnout is always just be thinking about what can I change, what can I do, right? Don't allow that burnout to happen.
so
We're going
kind
to
of
talk
like
about that.
the segue into what we're going to be talking about is, and again, if you ever feel, and I know that you probably wouldn't feel pressure, but I always just want to give that disclaimer out to you because we are live, so it's not like I can go back and edit it later. But if I ever ask you a question that you don't feel comfortable answering, of course you can always let me know, and my feelings will not be hurt. But was a factor of you going back to psych NP school, was it burnout with where you were, or were you looking to grow more? What was the reason?
It was, anticipating burnout, I will say. So I'm back in bedside. Now I'm actually doing kind of partially bedside. I'm doing some actual writing. I luckily have a lot of opportunities where I'm working, and I'm so grateful for that. And I also know I don't want to be in administration. I don't want to be a manager, a director. I'm absolutely have the skills to do that. But I like patients. I like the patient care. And I know I always want that when I'm away from it. However, I also know as I'm getting older that I'm not going to be wanting to do direct bedside care in those 12-hour shifts or the full time. And I wanted that flexibility. So this is a nice medium to bring my skills as step down nurse, the clinical skills I have, to another type of healthcare, and integrate that knowledge because everybody has comorbidities, et cetera. But in the end, it was really, I'm 56, so I'll be transparent about that. By the time I finish this program, I'll be 58. I'll be pushing 59 when I take my boards. And then I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to work maybe till I'm 70, maybe longer, but what do I want to be doing? Right. Because there's no doubt aging is aging. The body feels it no matter what. So you gotta think about that.
I think it's really admirable that you continue to grow, and that's inspiring to other people that maybe feel like, oh, you can always go back to school or change or pivot. It's never too late.
Mhm.
Um, so this is the 2024 Medscape report in regards to NP burnout, and it was just talking about how 7 out of 10 NPs feel burned out or depressed, and it says that that burnout and depression rates among NPs have been consistent over Medscape's past 3 reports, so over the past 3 years. And this lack of improvement underscores a persistent and troubling trend for NPs and others in the healthcare sector. Um, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm hearing that music. Are you hearing that music in the background? I'm hearing something playing in the background.
I do, but I don't have anything like playing here on
No,
my
it's so
end.
weird. What is that? So what I will say is that hopefully it's nothing copyrighted. The issue of mental health is really
Do you
important.
have maybe another screen open?
I'm looking. Let me hold on. Let me.
So, despite increased awareness and initiatives aimed at improving mental health and nurse job satisfaction, NPs continue to face significant emotional and physical challenges that can contribute to high levels of stress. So, if you're a nurse or a nurse practitioner that's tuning in right now, drop a comment below on what you feel is stressful in your work environment.
It was me. I was the problem. Some my music was open. So yeah, I would definitely comment you guys on what you feel. And this is part of why I was hesitant about becoming a nurse practitioner, because I felt that I didn't see the you know, the I saw problems. I saw the compensation problems, respect issues, practice authority issues that haven't changed. They're kind of changing. I mean, they definitely, I think, with COVID, things really took a big change and shift as far as full practice authority, telehealth. So there's things that definitely opened up that we could have not predicted would open up that are positives for the profession. However, we still need to have a bit more equality across the states, which is why I don't, I live in a very strict state. I won't practice in. I'll go across the water and go to Maryland or to, DC, or do telehealth in New York, which is full practice authority. I won't do that here. And I won't practice in a state where I don't have full practice authority. That's for me the bottom line. And or going in the federal government, because another big focus for me is serving veterans. And that's if you work in the federal government, you don't have to worry about your state licensure. It's all you're equal and you have full practice authority, just in case folks don't know. So some of those things can mitigate some of the burnout. It just depends.
So Julie said I'm in home health and wanted to become an NP, but I don't know if it will make me happier. But I have more of a passion to diagnose and treat, so hoping it will help my passion level.
Yeah. I mean, some things it's a huge investment of time, money, and some things we won't know until we're there, right?
If possible, if you know someone that you can shadow, as an RN, I always recommend before you take that plunge and that time, if you can shadow an NP for a week in the setting that you think you want to work, that might give you some insight as to, yes, I do want to do this, or no, I don't want to do this. I think for me, so this goes on to say that addressing burnout and depression requires a multifaceted approach that includes implementing systemic changes such as reducing workload, providing better mental health support, fostering a supportive and respectful work environment. I think for me, whether it was nursing or even as NP, it's always that workload, right? That it just seems that the higher ups or whoever's in charge, whether it's a hospital system, the amount, whether it's like, for example, a clinic that is corporate owned, they always want you to see more and more and more patients within a like specific amount of time, or in the hospital, right? On a med tele, they're now you have 6, now 7, pushing the limits every single time. So for me, one of the biggest thing is reducing workload. That is where
Mm-hmm.
I wish, and I suppose it hasn't even come to pass in nursing, because California is the only one that has mandated nurse patient ratios. But I don't even know how they would go about reducing or ensuring safe workload for NPs.
Yeah, I think that these are factors that NPs have to drive. I think these are factors that PAs and NPs have to drive, honestly, to just refuse and say we're not doing this, right? We're not going to be treated like we are partners in with providers as providers. And our doctors getting squeezed, absolutely, right? Part of it is the squeeze of private equity firms running practices. There's that squeeze, right? The profit down squeeze. There's also the hierarchy squeeze that happens, which I think can also lead more to burnout. If you don't feel like you're being treated well by providers who, MDs or DOs or whatever it might be, or there's a disparate treatment, kind of a two-tier system, I can see where that also could lead to burnout and the free labor, the I'm doing notes for 3-4 hours a week. I'm, turning into, and even for, PMHMPs, they talk about that too. It's like, am I on this conveyor belt? But I think you have to really, like, for me, I know I'm really just clear about what I want to be doing. And I won't work in, like, a factory setting as a provider. I just won't do it. And I think that a lot of people are just in situations where they feel they cannot stand up for themselves. They don't have the backing. We need our jobs. We all have to make money. Depends on where you live. But the things that I hear and read about on some of the groups is really abhorrent, and it's really exploitative, honestly, of nurses as nurse practitioners.
So it says the challenging nature of managing high patient loads coupled with administrative burdens, long hours, emotional toll of patient care, it creates a demanding work environment for many NPs. Expectations to stay abreast of medical advancements and maintain a high standard of care may exacerbate this stress. I really like this quote by this NP. It says, the politics of medicine have become outrageous. We can't care for people anymore. Rather, it's all about how many we can see and how fast. We are becoming corporate drones with prescriptive authority. And our background as from nursing, right? Our nursing education plays a high emphasis on patient care, caring about the patient. Personally, I'm very empathic. So if I feel like I can't provide the kind of care that I want to provide because of managing, high patient loads, that's going to deteriorate my job satisfaction and that's going to make me feel burned out.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. I mean, how for you where you're at in the state or area you're in, how do you see, the field and the treatment of the marketplace for NPs that are doing acute care FNP work? Is it is there more jobs and more positions? Is it better treatment? Is it going down that corporate route? What do you see?
It just really depends on where you work, and that's why you were saying, like, change your environment. There was a few people that I stayed in touch with that graduated after they became nurse practitioners, and the ones that are the happiest are those that went into specialty care. So like rheumatology, urology, right? The one that was absolutely miserable was working for a physician where I mean, he was working her like a workhorse. It's like go around and see patients for this many hours in the clinic, then go around on patients in the hospital. And it's like she was very, very intelligent, um, was a great NP, but she had trouble setting boundaries, you
Hmm.
know? And I see that a lot, especially with women. We want
Right.
to be that yes, like that good yes person, be agreeable, but it's like you do have to set boundaries. And if you don't set boundaries, people will continue to walk all over you. So she was miserable for, we would tell her repeatedly, like, you can get a better job. Like, you don't have to put up with this. Part of it, I believe, is she signed a contract. So be very weary of contracts too.
Yeah.
That don't say you're going to stay for somewhere for 3 years or something. Be very weary of contracts. Um, so she had signed some kind of contract and she was tied there for a few years. She finally was able to get another position and she's doing much better. So it depends on who you work for.
Hmm.
Florida, we can practice autonomously after working for a physician for 3,000 hours, but job satisfaction really depends on who even if you're autonomous, but you're working for like a CVS Minute Clinic or something like that, right? It just really depends on, well, you can have an autonomous license without owning your own practice. I just want to clarify that. So, um, but if you're depending on where you work, like, and not all CVS Minute clinics will be the same, right? You could have a great district manager versus a terrible one. So the one with the great manager is going to make that specific region be a better work environment. So it just really depends on who is overseeing you. Are they micromanaging you? Do they respect you?
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw Joe Neal is on. Thank you. Joe Neal's an expert on nurse bullying. So she has a lot to offer about that topic as well. And Scott, hey, Scott, glad you could join us in the comments. We miss you. Yeah, I think that there is boundaries are super important. Read your contracts, know the laws in your state about contracts, and always ask yourself in a contract situation, who does this benefit and how does it benefit me? How does it benefit the other party? Because I just am hearing over and over again people signing contracts, and I'm like, well, you basically signed yourself into some kind of indentured servitude process. You're not getting paid for many hours a week. And how did you allow that to happen? Right. I mean, it's like, I don't know what that thought process it would be for somebody to allow themselves to get in the corner like that on a 2 3 year contract, especially coming out of school. There
I
are
think
options.
as a new graduate, whether you're a new nurse graduate or a new NP graduate, you're, what is that saying? Like fresh, doe-eyed or naive. Like they may necessarily feel like, oh, this is a great opportunity. Everybody wants experience and they're not hiring me. This person is finally willing to hire me. So let me just sign this contract. But yes, I agree with you. You just don't be patient. Your job opportunity will come. Um, but yes, Dr. Midwife, if you want to join us, you can still join us. He says, sorry, I'm late. But you can still join us, but I don't see you in the waiting room. Um,
You jump on in. I think setting is everything, and I think this is again about why I didn't become a nurse practitioner before, because I couldn't see the end game as being a game that I was going to be willing to participate in. And yeah, part of it is the hindsight's 2020, right? But I don't regret not deciding earlier, because I know right now I'm ready and this is the right time to do it. But I also know here's the employers I'm willing to work for. I mean, doctors, think when people think about this, if you want to be in a profession and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go spend all this money and all these years going to school, take more boards, have more, legal obligation. Well, okay, so do doctors, when they finish med school, they finish their residencies, interns, do they do all that in their hometown? No, they don't. They move. So if you're not willing to move and relocate and be where you can be in a fulfilling position, that right there could be the first problem. You've got to decide, is this the thing for me? If I'm going to stay in this town, what is the marketplace in this town, this area? The marketplace sucks. You got to move.
It depends on your location. Well, it depends on for example, if psychiatric now telehealth has revolutionized medical care, right?
Mhm.
So let's say that Florida is a terrible state for salary because it is. However, you can get licensed in other states, even though you reside in Florida.
Mhm.
And you can see patients in other states if you're into telehealth. If you're not into telehealth, and I am giving the psychiatric nurse practitioner example because that's very different from family. You're treating depression, anxiety, a plethora of conditions, but that's going to be your bread and butter, right? Like depression, anxiety, maybe some like what bipolar 2, not bipolar 1,
Yeah.
no like
I mean, all of it.
it depends on the
Mhm.
severity too,
I mean, it depends on the severity and the setting, clearly, right? So if you're seeing somebody through telehealth, similar to an outpatient clinic, right? So that's for the most part. Now, like the hospital I'm at, we use psychiatric telehealth in the emergency room, right? So there's those opportunities also that are, there's a lot of different opportunities. You got to think about being outside the box and what that role might entail, and also what are the state rules. I mean, telehealth has there's a lot of regs about telehealth, and each state has their own rules about whether you can do it across state lines. And so again, you got to do your research. You got to know once, every state's different here. And unless you're going to go work for the federal government, where it's more of an equalizer of roles, or the military or something like that, you really do need to understand your state laws.
So, what is some of the dangers of burnout? Is that sustained burnout can hinder job performance, it can change how nurses think about their jobs, and it can even put patients in danger.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we all have worked with nurses, people that are burned out, or maybe I mean, I think, now that I'm back bedside after taking a big break, I certainly see those people that have entered nursing in the last couple of years that, they're prime and ripe for burnout. They're already going through burnout because they didn't really understand what they were getting into. And they didn't have a game plan at the beginning. You have to have a game plan to avoid burnout. You have to have a game plan of self-care, of boundaries, of what's the long game here for myself in my career, me as an individual, all of those things. And people, I so the person who does my hair just told me today that she told her mother she's not going to med school, she's going to nursing school, off of a conversation we had the last time that you did my hair. Right. So, and I thought that was really awesome. So we had this conversation just today, right before I got on the live. And I said, it's really important that you think about what makes you tick. Can you do 312s in a row? Can you, why do you want to be a nurse? What is going to feed you about that process of being a nurse? And you got to know and identify what that will be, and feed that, right, and lean into that. Because if you don't, and you're like the person who can't say no, and oh yeah, I work the extra shifts, or I take the crappy schedule, or I take the crappy patients and I don't say anything and people are mean, or blah blah blah. No, it's not going to work. It's like I told her, I said, your patients' lives depend on you being able to use your mouth and your brain. So you have to make sure that you really nail it, that you really use your voice and feel comfortable, and don't worry about whether people like you or not. You've got to be taking care of yourself.
So if you this here page just lists a little bit of like top reasons for burnout, and Julie had mentioned that charting, that really bogs her down, and she feels that's one of her burnouts. And not surprisingly, that's at the top of the list, with too many bureaucratic tasks, lack of respect from administrators, insufficient compensation salary, too many hours at work, lack of respect from patients, lack of control autonomy. I do want to say that in general, like, let's be nicer people to everybody, right? I just feel like over like incivility is increasing. I was actually reading something about that the other day, that like not necessarily just in healthcare, but like people are just being more rude to each other and more mean to each other. Let's just be respectful of each other, and if we disagree on something, let's say it in a way where we're discussing the point and not screaming or threatening violence at other people. Because whether you work in the ER or in psych, you've been threatened before, or you've been almost physically, I can't say specific words, but you could potentially be at the brunt end of physical violence. Lack of control autonomy, uh, increasing computerized of practice. Now, Scott had brought up that new AI tools promise to significantly cut down on charting time. I'm all for harnessing AI, but I don't think that what I'm concerned about is that um, they may, like, whoever the higher ups are, may want to justify increasing our workload because, oh, now you have AI, so let's give you even more patients because we've cut down on charting time. That's my concern, that may happen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, I have an MBA, and when we start treating people like factory parts, right? The production that we have as a service industry of healthcare workers is a factory line, assembly line, which is what we've done, right? And that's happened through many changes in the last 20 years in healthcare. That, you know, there's only so many pieces, right, of the product we can produce. So how do you squeeze out, a couple more units a day, right? A couple more visits, a couple more, whatever it is. And who gets that money, right? So is this, who's in the driver's seat? So I just think be in the driver's seat. And a lot of times, doctors are getting squeezed. Everybody's feeling that squeeze. And who's making the money, right? So a
But
lot of
like
insurance.
Julie says, right? A lot of this is insurance driven, right? So it's like, and that goes to almost like the feeling of helplessness when you're an NP. Unless you have your own practice, you have
Mhm.
no control over either that, or you leave wherever you are, right? If they tell
Yeah.
you you have to see this many patients per day now, that's what you're expected to see.
I mean,
So
I don't think that the insurance issue is driving greed and, private equity companies that are owning practices, right? That's two different things. The insurance companies drive the bureaucracy of paperwork and
it's
that
like a
part.
vicious cycle, because I feel like the corporation wants this much money, the insurance is this much, so it's like they have to see this many visits per day because they want to make this much money. So it's like it's just a vicious cycle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that, again, there's a lot of policy changes that are continue to happen in this country. And I think that we have to be part of that solution, right? Like, what is the solution to, you know, having a career, one, as a provider, that you're compensated properly and that patients actually get seen and get the care they need, right? I mean, the the people who really lose are the patients. because they're getting rushed through the system. And, you know, so I mean, there's a lot we could talk about with healthcare and healthcare reform and policy changes. But I think that the more we start to see, like for me, I feel positive and hopeful about mental health services expanding in the federal government. I think that that is going to be something that will be happening in the next administration, and it has continued to happen in this current administration. So for me, that's part of why I was like, okay, I think this is the right time to go in. It's also, there's a cash pay component as well. So, just like you could do concierge, right? Medicine. You could do so many different types of medicine. It just really depends if you want to be an entrepreneur or not, or what kind of service line you want to work in. But I think self care, like there's the things we can control, right? But there's the things we can't. So if we focus on the things we can't control, if we put all our chips there, right, that's not going to help the burnout. And sometimes it might just mean changing our context and saying,
Mhm.
hey, I'm going to go back and get another certificate, or I'm going to change. I'm going to do something else, go do DNP, go work for an agency, whatever it might be. I mean,
So
have you thought about doing other types of work, like being a professor or working in regulatory work or anything else besides what you're doing?
I have, and it's something that, but again, with education, that's, I love teaching. Like that brings me so much joy.
Yeah.
However, the pay is abysmal. So
Yeah.
it's like balancing, I with my health, like I have Sjogren's, I have constant huge health bills. I just had a surgery, so it's like I have a very expensive life
Yeah.
that I don't know if education can cover that.
Yeah. Right. Right. And it's like I used to teach also on the side, and I loved it because I didn't do a lot of it. I just did enough where it felt good and it kind of fed, it wasn't really even for the money. It was a little side money, but yeah, I mean, there's a certain number of hours in the day. If you've got a full-time job, it's,
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, it's a
When I
lot
was
to
when I
work
was
on.
working less hours, I would do clinicals one day, one or twice a week, and then work my other job. But right now, that's not feasible.
Yeah.
A few quotes that like NPs said is with like what triggers their feelings of burnout is my work-life balance is non-existent. I take charting home most nights. I would say if you're working somewhere where you have to take charting home, I know that, like Adrian said before, people have to pay bills, but if you are, I highly recommend you don't do that. That's like burnout 101 guaranteed. Please set limits, like have your free time, have your day off.
Yeah.
Let's see what else they say. Our job duties seem to increase regularly, and we are expected to do more with less. Patients' expectations are also extremely high, and unfortunately, I think that's everywhere. Where it's like whether you're a nurse or an NP, it just keeps like the expectations, they just keep increasing.
Yeah. And I think civility is really important. I mean, I think to the public, I'm in an environment where I kind of get a little more of the raw public, a little bit more than I used to, my other inpatient jobs.
Hmm.
And I am a little shocked at the public sometimes. I'm a little shocked, but I think it's also expectation management about, hey, you're in a hospital. It's going to take a while. There's going to be waiting. There's it's not a drive through. Um, but I think that I will give a credit to where the place I work and a lot of hospitals and healthcare facilities for making it very explicit what the code of conduct is. Where I worked before for 12 years, it was not clear whatsoever. The code of conduct and expectations for patients and the public is extremely clear where I work. It is on big banners at every door, every unit, pretty much everywhere you walk. There's a sign up reminding people. So I think and there's a very robust security detail. So I think that's also really important. And maybe somebody who's only worked in that environment wouldn't see it that way, but from where I used to work, to me, at least I have something I can refer to. But if you don't have that, and then you're expected to just put up with abuse, no, forget it. Not happening.
Yeah. And then, so to end, I wanted to talk about coping mechanisms. You discussed this earlier. There's healthy coping mechanisms and then there's unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? So, most of the top ones are on the healthy side. So, what can you do for to help prevent burnout, definitely having a support system, talking with family members, exercise. I wouldn't say necessarily just like sleeping 12 hours a day, but if, everything within like moderation. So if you're sleeping more, like you're getting your 8 hours of sleep, okay, fantastic. But if you're sleeping, 12, 13, 14 hours, then that could be a sign of depression there. So also seeking help, play or listening to music, isolating yourself. Maybe you don't want to feel like you're a burden on others, but studies show that actually like interacting with others, and I'm an introvert, so it's not like interacting with a large group of people, but even if it's just one person, it can help prevent burnout rather than isolating yourself. What are some of your favorite coping mechanisms?
I would say exercise and making sure I get enough sleep. I just don't do well without enough sleep, I've noticed, and I have to exercise. I realized today because I'm struggling right now in grad school with my balance of what my routine is. And I would say that I've realized it's more important that I just get to the gym than I worry about how long I'm there. It's more important if I can go 4 or 5 times a week, even if I have less than an hour, than to think, oh, I need 2 hours to go to the gym and then I get caught up in that and I don't go. Um, but yeah, I think that having a routine, having good sleep, just the basics. I don't, really watching what I eat, all of that. I don't drink alcohol. I play with my dogs a lot, so I'm surprised playing with pets isn't up there on the list. So, really cuddling with my animals is really important. What about yours? What are your top coping mechanisms?
By far for me, it's exercise and also my dog, and eating healthy is a must for me because of with the Sjogren's. When I don't eat healthy, I notice like my flare up of symptoms of pain. So, and then I just had foot surgery. I don't know if you know. So
Yeah,
I immediately noticed, like, because obviously I was not non weight bearing for a few weeks, like, oh, my mental health suffers so bad when I can't exercise. Like, that by far,
right.
exercise is a must. Like, it just does so much for me, for my mental health.
Yeah, there really is no substitute for exercise that I can think of. I mean, it's so healthy. I mean, again, I'm curious if you watching this video, let us know what are your coping mechanisms and whether they're healthy, not healthy, what's worked, what doesn't work, and what are things that you can see yourself doing long term. But I think it's really important to figure out, like, for me, I just have to know what are my top three mandatory things. I have to sleep, I have to work out, right? And I've got to eat well. So if I can just do those three things every day on some level, I'm good. you know? And then there's like three others, right? That are the bonus round. If I get to those a couple times a week, I'm good,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I'm sure you've got your bonus round. And I'm also surprised like shopping is not on that list. I don't know. Like, or just scrolling online. Um,
Very true.
there's a
Yeah.
couple things but boundaries are really important. And no matter what your area of expertise, your area you're going to work, where you're living, it, we have to know it's our obligation to ourselves and our profession and our patients to know what makes us tick, know what makes you tick, what serves your highest, because we're no good if we're not at our highest for our patients, right? It's all it takes is that 1 second or that one moment where you're feeling down or you're not engaged to not notice a symptom of a patient, not notice or read a lab result or pick up on a nuance about something with a patient. That, this role requires our full attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any others that are on there? Hide the credit cards from Adrian. I know, my online shopping. No, I now spend all my money on my dogs. This is the thing. I spend all money on my dogs, pretty much. I have no discretionary income. My dogs I require a part-time job. So that's why I'm back on social media. It's super great having this conversation, talking about burnout. This is a big topic. Let us know in the comments and whoever's channel you're on, how do you deal with burnout? How do you prevent it? And what do you think really works? And, let's share, let's learn from each other, give each other some tips.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hopefully, Adrian, we can continue to do these lives more frequently.
Yeah, let's do it, because part of my boundaries, I'm carving out the time.